is up, guys? This is Nightmare, and today I have a new build video for you all. This is my Nocturnal Stamina Nightblade build for the Summerset update and onward. This build focuses on high damage output and avoiding damage by cloaking and dodging attacks. This build specializes in 1vxing, taking out opponents very quickly with the high amount of stacked weapon damage we have with this build, along with the high crit chance we're getting. So with that, let's get right into the sets. So starting off with my weapons, I have a Nirnhoned 2H sword of Hunding's Rage with a disease enchantment. So the reason why I went with the disease enchantment is because it has a chance to proc Minor Defile. And since we use Incap as a main ultimate on Stamina Nightblade, we're also getting Major Defile. So when you stack the Major and Minor Defile, you are really decreasing the amount of health that your enemies will be getting back if your burst combo is not able to kill the opponent, which usually is enough. The only time where you may not be able to one-shot someone is if you're going up against a tank or someone who may be blocking or avoiding your attacks a little bit better, and that's when the Major and Minor Defile will come into play. However, moving on, we have Nirnhoneds, which for this build we're stacking lots of weapon damage, so the 15% increased weapon damage on this two-handed sword is really good. And then, like I said, we're stacking weapon damage, so Hunding's Rage is the set of choice because we have 300 weapon damage up 100% of the time. We don't have to proc it or anything. With most sets, when you want to proc the 5-piece weapon damage bonus, something usually has to happen, right? You get more weapon damage, but it usually comes at a delay after doing damage, or it comes at a delay that it has to build up, or you have to take damage to get the increased weapon damage. So I prefer Hunding's Rage because for Nightblades, you just want to jump in, get the kill, get out. You don't want to have to stack up your weapon damage and then be able to nuke. You're kind of playing like an assassin, kind of like a ganker in a way, but you can gank with this, but you're still able to take on multiple opponents at the same time, just bursting down one opponent at a time, moving from person to person. So something else that Stamina Nightblade is really good with is crit chance, because we have, I believe, 10% increased crit damage from passives, which is very good. So stacking increased weapon crit is nice. And then the 3-piece max stamina is also going to be good. We're sitting at, I believe, almost 40k max stamina, which is pretty nice. 36,000 stamina. Next up, we have a Master's Bow. So the Master's Bow is going to be our opener. If you don't know what Master's Bow does, it gives us another 301 increased weapon damage on the opponent that is affected by Poison Arrow. This is also going to be infused, so we have a 30% increased weapon enchant effect with the weapon damage enchant. So we're getting another 452 increased weapon damage when you proc the enchant. And then you proc the 2-piece bonus from Master's Bow, it's another 301. And both of these will get buffed by Rally. So, or your Major Brutality, your Rally buff. So, what does this mean? You're stacking tons of weapon damage, your Nirnhoned sword, your 5-piece bonus from Hunding's Rage, your Master's Bow with 452 weapon damage enchant, and then the 301 Master's Bow 2-piece bonus. So how you're able to get this set to go, or how you get this build set up properly, is with the Master's Bow and the Hunding's Rage 2-handed sword, is, as you can see, I am on my bow bar, so I lose the 4 and 5-piece bonus for Hunding's Rage. I switch to my 2H bar, the 5-piece bonus now becomes active, and of course the Master's Bow is not active. This still works fine because, unlike my past Nocturnal builds, the bow bar isn't really our main damage source anymore. It's now all coming from the 2-handed bar. Before I was using marksman and I would pretty much burst someone's health down halfway on the bow bar before I jumped in and finished them off. Now we're just stacking all this weapon damage with the bow bar. You're cutting out about 10% of their health. You switch to the 2H bar and then you're nuking them down with that. Next up, my 2-piece monster set I'm using is Selene. This is just going to help with single target burst. Very nice too, especially with Fear and Incap. So with the next update, Incap is getting a nerf to only stun when you have lower health than them. So it's going to be stunning on a defensive tool, but it won't stun if you are on offense. However, we still have one of the strongest crowd control abilities in the game as a Stamina Nightblade, or a Nightblade in general. We have Mass Hysteria. So that is still not an issue. Good players will be able to adjust to it, and bad players will struggle. But that is perfectly okay. Bad players can just go play Magic Sorcerer and ruin cage people all day. So that's that. Like I said, 2-piece Selene. Everything is going to be max stamina enchants. And then I'll go over my traits in a second. I think I have 4 Impin, 3 well fitted. So that's 1 Impin, 2 Impin, 3 Impin, 1 well fitted, 2 well fitted, 3 well fitted. Yeah, so 4 Impin, 3 well fitted total. The dodge chance, or the reduced dodge roll cost is going to be very nice. So continuing on, I have my Hunting's Rage, Impin, Impin Shoulder Selene. Bone Pirate is going to be my second 5-piece set. Of course, is the strongest stamina sustained set in the game. It just gives the most max stamina, and most stamina recovery in one set. So 2 and 4 pieces max stamina, 3 pieces stamina recovery, 5 pieces another 2,000 max stamina, and another 150 stamina recovery. Currently I don't have my Bone Pirate gold, so these are the stats with it purple. Another thing is we're using 7 medium for maximum amount of crit chance and maximum amount of stamina recovery. Moving on, Bone Pirate gloves, Hunting's Rage legs, and Hunting's Rage feet. And then my jewelry is going to be Bone Pirate, all robust, all weapon damage enchants. So that pretty much covers my gear. Okay, so before we get into the skills I'm using, I'll go over my potions and food. So of course, since we are using Bone Pirate, you want the Dubious Command Throne. It's the drink that gives max stam, max health, and stam recovery. And then potions I'm using are currently these. Immune to knockback for 10 seconds, Major Savagery, again stacking that crit chance is going to be very good, and then restoring stamina, along with the stam recovery buff. So these are perfect. The other potions that are just as good as these are the Immune to knockback, Major Expedition, and Restore Stamina, but with those you're losing the crit chance. I use the Major Expedition pots on my Stamplar because I don't have a gap closer with my Stamplar, and I'm already getting Major Savagery with Biting Jabs. However, Stamina Nightblade doesn't have a source of Major Savagery, at least with this build. So I want it through the potion, and I want the Immune to knockback and Restore Stamina. So that's going to cover my consumables. Next up, I will go over my skills and abilities. Alright guys, so starting off with the skills I'll be using with the Nocturnal builds. Starting off with the damaging bar, as always, I have made a few changes compared to the last Nocturnal builds, the outdated version, which I'll go over in a few minutes. But starting off, we have Ambush. This is our gap closer. Since we're using a gap closer, the Major Expedition pots is not needed. So the gap closer just lets us jump instantly onto someone, and it also gives us power on our next light attack, and increasing our light attack damage by 40%. So I really love this change to Empower because I have always light attack weaved everything. everything I've done is a light attack weave. So before, with the Empower, it was a 20% increased damage on the um, next damage that you did to the target, right? So when I ambushed, it was always a habit of me to light attack, then surprise attack. However, the Empower was getting buffed to the light attack and not the surprise attack. So what you actually wanted to do was teleport or ambush, and then just light surprise attack. You didn't want a light attack, so you could get the 20% buff on the surprise attack. Now that it is a 40% buff on light attacks, this is a huge damage increase for myself. Like I said, I light attack weaved before anything. Ambush, light attack, surprise attack. Tons more damage now. 40% extra damage on that light attack is so much nicer. Also, it does kind of like do a kind of a lockdown. That's how gap closers tend to work. It's kind of like you get slowed whenever you're getting gap close to someone. I don't know if you guys have realized this. But anyways, that's the first ability, ambush. Next is surprise attack. Surprise attack is just the perfect spammable ability in Elder Scrolls Online. It does everything. It's huge burst physical damage, almost 10k as you can see unbuffed with rally, and none of the other buffs. It's over 10k. Right, so it's also applying major fracture, reducing their physical resistance by 5300. Insanely well, so any abilities after your surprise attack are going to hit harder because they have less armor. Moving on, my main CC ability, my main crowd control, is going to be Mass Hysteria. It's an AoE, max 2 enemies fear, and this goes through block. It also applies minor maim. Both of these are shadow abilities, as you can see, surprise attack and Mass Hysteria, which for shadow barrier, we have 6 seconds of increased physical and spell resist for ourselves. So constantly spamming your surprise attack on someone or engaging into a fight, hitting your surprise attack, you're instantly getting a increased resistance buff, making you even tankier. Moving on, this is the first change I made to the build, is moving Relentless Focus onto my front bar and using this as an execute whenever it comes up. So this pretty much gives you an 8% damage done buff and a 10% stam recovery buff, which stacks with the major buff. Very nice. And then the light attacks, 5 light attacks will allow you to proc the Spectral Bow, dealing 19k disease damage. So whenever this procs and I use it, and if it crits for 16 to 17k sometimes. I did have a clip of me one-shotting a Magica Sorcerer, but I believe I just deleted that clip today, now that I think about it. But it was like a 19k health Magica Sorcerer. I light attack surprise attacked, light attack incapped, his shield was gone, I was getting a increased damage done buff to him from incap, and then I shot him with the Spectral Bow that just one-shot his health. It was pretty freaking insane. So that's why I moved this to the front bar, just so I can use it more often. I never really used it when it was on the back bar. Moving on, Rally, of course, you want that 20% weapon damage buff, Major Brutality. It's also a heal over time and a burst heal. I prefer Rally for the burst heal over forward momentum, since I am using Shovel with this build. Incap Strike, you all know it. If you're Stamina Nightblade, you're definitely using this. 16k unbuffed disease damage, 70 ultimate cost, and then it increases your damage done by 20% for 6 seconds, while also applying Major Defile, which can be buffed by champion points. It's just too broken, and I'm waiting for this thing to get nerfed. I know they're doing the whole crowd control nerf to it, which is going to be very well deserved, in my opinion. But like I said earlier, good players will be able to adapt to it and still know how to use this ultimate, whereas lower tier players will just get lost. But moving on to the bow bar, poison injection, very nice execute, very nice damage over time, and it procs our master's bow. Shuffle, major evasion for 15% dodge chance. It also removes snares and removes slows pretty much. Very nice. And then now that I moved my Relentless Focus to the front bar, I replaced it with Leeching Strikes on the back bar. This is just going to give us increased healing and even better stamina sustain, which is very nice. In my opinion, the Nightblade class has one of the best sustains in the game because of Leeching Strikes and the other morph. Their ability to just get their main resource back super easily is, in my opinion, really broken. But nonetheless, we're using it. Of course, we have Vigor. This is our other heal. It's a heal over time, the very big heal over time for 5 seconds. So you're comboing the Rally heal over time and Burst Heal with the Vigor heal over time. And then when you're on offense, you're getting a little bit of healing from Leeching Strikes. And then also Shadowy Disguise is really good for opening a fight with a guaranteed crit, but it's also really good for getting away from fights. Being able to cloak, back off out of a fight, heal up, and then engage again. I'm using Flawless Dawnbreaker on the back bar just for the 8% increased weapon damage. You get 5% from Flawless Dawnbreaker and then another 3% for having a Fighter's Guild ability slotted. I will never really use this ultimate since Endcap is just so much stronger. All the passives you will be taking, some important ones are Pressure Points, no, sorry, which one is it? Hemorrhage. Critical damage done by 10%. That's a really good one. Shadow Barrier is the resistance buff. Refreshing Shadows is also really strong for even more recovery. Catalyst for increased ultimate gains. And then I don't think, yeah, Leeching Strikes is going to give us the transfer. So we get even more ultimate. Two-hand passives, all of these. Bow passives, taking all these. Medium armor passives, you don't need heavy or light armor since we're 7 medium. I am a vampire with this build, even though I look like a werewolf. But this is really nice because 10% magic and stam recovery, and then Undeath passive, and Darkstalker. Those are the 3 main reasons why I use Vampire, especially on a Nightblade. Fighters Guild, want all these passives, and Mages Guilds, you don't really need it to be 10 since we're not using any of those. If you have Undaunted level 9, that'll be even better. All Assaults passives, and like I said, you want Vigor. And then for this build, I'm a Khajiit. I recommend being either Khajiit or Wood Elf for this build. I prefer Khajiit for the increased weapon crit by 8%. And then Wood Elf and Khajiit both get stealthy bonus. Khajiit will get 20% health recovery, 10% stamina recovery, whereas Wood Elf gets even more, 21% stam recovery, and then 3% max stam compared to the Khajiit. Second tier for this build would be Redguard, and then below that I would go with either Argonian, Dark Elf, or Imperial. So those are your choices for race. Alchemy, medicinal use is always very nice to have. So that's going to cover my skill. Alright, real quick going over my champion points, starting with the blue tree, the ritual. I have 75 into Mighty for 14% increased physical poison and disease damage. All of our damaging types are those 3, so that's very nice. 20 into Thaumaturge, just to help increase my poison injection damage by 12%. 51 Precise Strikes is very important. We have very high crit chance, and then we also have 10% increased crit damage from being a Nightblade, so that extra 19% here is very nice. I threw the remaining 8 into Piercing, with 51 into Mastered Arms. The majority of our damage is direct damage, so 19% there is really nice. With 37 into Blessed for 9% increased healing done. This helps survivability. A very long time ago, I used to not put anything into Blessed, or the other one in the red tree I'll show you later. I just put everything in damage, but I started putting some into blessed. Definitely found the difference, so I definitely recommend that. I have 51 into Ironclad for 19% reduced direct damage done, 36 resistant for 976 crit resistance, 43 Hardy and Elemental Defender with 40 thick skins, 37 quick recovery. This is the other one I used to not put any in, for 9% increased healing received, also very important for survivability. Moving on to our green tree, we have 27 Siphoner, 40 Warlord for reduced break free cost by 16%, 75 into Mooncalf for 14% increased stam recovery. I don't put any into Tenacity since I am not really up front brawling with someone where I would do a heavy attack often. I'm more of the type to jump in, deal my damage, get the kill, get out, and then recover outside of the fight. If I'm in the middle of a fight and I start to run out of stamina, yeah, I'll do some heavy attacks, but very rarely does that happen. 40 into Tumbling, since we do dodge roll quite a bit. 6 into Shade for 4% reduced sneak cost. And this is the big one. Something I just recently started doing a couple months ago on Stamina Nightblade was putting 62 points into Befoul. If you are not already doing this on a Stamina Nightblade, I definitely recommend it. It's 47%, excuse me, of a buff on your Major and Minor Defile, your healing reduction abilities. And what in this build gives you Major Defile? That's right, end cap. Super cheap ultimate. Every time you engage on someone, your end cap is up. They're gonna get the increased Major Defile hit on them. So usually I believe it's a 30% healing reduction buff, or debuff, excuse me. Now it's a 44% healing reduction buff, debuff. Major Defile now also reduces healing received and reduces their health recovery. So very good for countering healing battery like Wardens or Templars. It's also really good for countering stamina builds that are using Troll King. Yeah, so I definitely recommend putting a lot of points into Befoul. It's definitely worth it. So that's pretty much going to cover up the champion point. Alright guys, so taking a quick look at my buff stats, I'll make sure to put a screenshot of my fully buff stats when I'm in combat with the bow in enchant proc and master's bow enchant proc. Of course, one thing to note though, the master bow 2-piece bonus does not show up on the character sheet. So I say this is a 5,000 weapon damage build. It is if you were to count the master's bow 2-piece bonus. It just doesn't show in the character sheet like I just said. So unbuffed, on the 2H bar we have 3,208 weapon damage with 54% weapon crit with 2k stam recovery, 36,000 stamina, and I have about 20,000 health in Cyrodiil. Spell resistance and physical resistance is about 11,000 with 2,000 crit resistance. My resistance buffs, as you can see, 16,000 physical and spell resistance. With Rally, our weapon damage goes up to 3,800. And with Major Savagery, we have 64% weapon crit. Also, we have the Major Endurance, so our stam recovery is 2170. With the Minor Endurance also, it's 2281. So that's pretty much what the stats look like. Also from stealth real quick, weapon damage is even higher with almost 4,100 weapon damage. Again, this is not with the bow enchant. I will put in a screenshot of my fully stats buffed here. Alright guys, so that's going to cover the builds for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the builds, please leave a like. If you want to see more content from me, more build videos, more gameplay, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell right next to the subscribe button so you will be notified whenever I make a new upload. So that's going to cover the video for today, and I will see you all next time.